What would make Mahatma Gandhi pause in the middle of fighting for a nation's freedom to order a formal investigation into a single little girl? Not a seance, not a circle of believers, but a real commission of 15 skeptics sent to prove her wrong. She claimed she had already lived and died once before, in a town called Mathura, married to a cloth merchant she could describe down to the small wart on his cheek. What that commission uncovered on the ground is still argued over to this day. For her first 4 years, Shanti Devi barely spoke. Born in Delhi in 1926, she was the kind of quiet child relatives worried about. Then the words came, and they were the wrong words for a toddler. She talked about a husband. She talked about a son. She described running a household in a city she had never once visited, nearly 145 kilometers away. She used phrases from a regional dialect her own family didn't speak. And she said all of it not as a fantasy, but flatly, as memory. The details were unnervingly specific. Her husband, she said, owned a cloth shop that faced the Dwarkadish temple. He was fair-skinned. He wore reading glasses. And he had a small wart on his left cheek. She described the inside of a house she had supposedly never entered. When her parents pressed her, she didn't waver and she didn't embellish. She simply repeated the same facts, the same way, every single time. For a 6-year-old, that kind of unshakable consistency is almost harder to explain than the claims themselves. At 6, she tried to run away heading, she insisted, for Mathura, to the family that was really hers. Back at school, she dropped the line that changed everything. She told her teacher she had been married, that she had given birth, and that she had died 10 days later. Then she named him out loud, Kedarnath Chaub, a merchant. A child inventing a fairy tale names a prince or a hero. She named an ordinary cloth seller and described bleeding out after childbirth. That detail stopped the adults around her cold. Her headmaster could have ignored it. Instead, he did something that turned a strange family story into one of the most documented cases of its kind. He wrote a letter to Mathura, asking whether a cloth merchant named Kedarnath Chaub actually existed, a man whose wife had died after giving birth. He sealed it, sent it off, and waited. And what came back was not the polite denial everyone in that household expected. It was worse, or, depending on how you look at it, far, far stranger. The reply confirmed the impossible. There really was a Kedarnath Chaub in Mathura. He really did run a cloth business. And 7 years earlier, his wife, a woman named Lugdi Devi, really had died, 10 days after giving birth to a son. Every checkable claim from a little girl in Delhi had just been verified by a total stranger over 100 kilometers away. There was no obvious way she could have known any of it. Word spread fast, and it eventually reached one of the most famous men alive on earth. This was the 1930s. Mahatma Gandhi was leading a movement that would soon free an entire nation. When the story reached him, he didn't dismiss it, and he didn't celebrate it either. He did something harder. He decided the claim deserved a genuine test, not a seance, not a believer's circle, but real scrutiny. So a commission was assembled to investigate, 15 people, and they were chosen for one reason above all, because they were exactly the kind of serious, hard-headed adults who would never be fooled by a clever child. These weren't mystics. The commission included members of parliament, lawyers, journalists, and respected social workers, exactly the kind of skeptical, reputation-conscious adults who had everything to lose by endorsing a hoax. Their assignment was simple and brutal. Take the girl to a city she swore she had lived in and catch her getting something wrong. One slip, one wrong name, one wrong street, one detail that didn't match, and the whole story would collapse on the spot. And most of them fully expected exactly that to happen. But before the long trip, they ran a quieter test right there in Delhi, and this is where it gets genuinely chilling. On November 13, 1935, Kedarnath himself traveled to the city, bringing his current wife and the very son that Lugdi had died giving birth to. To trap the girl, a family friend deliberately introduced Kedarnath not as her husband, but as his own elder brother. If Shanti had been coached, she would parrot the lie. If she truly remembered, she would have to contradict a grown man to his face. She was 8 years old. She looked at the stranger being called her brother-in-law, and she blushed. Then she rejected the script entirely. No. She said, "He is not my husband's brother, he is my husband himself." She pointed out his fair skin. She pointed out the wart on his left cheek, the exact detail she had been describing for years, long before she could possibly have met him. And then she recognized the small boy standing with him as her own son. The room went dead silent. Watching a child reach for a stranger's son and call him her own unsettled even the hardened men in that room. But recognizing a husband inside a quiet house is one thing. The commission wanted much more. They wanted to put her on a train, drop her into the actual streets of Mathura with no warning and no guide, and see whether a city she had never set foot in would recognize her back. And that is exactly where this story stops being merely strange. On November 24th, the party boarded a train from Mathura, every adult on board watching for the smallest mistake. As they neared the city, Shanti grew visibly excited. She began announcing details before they appeared, saying the temple doors would be shut at that hour, using a local turn of phrase, "A Delhi child simply shouldn't know." The committee wrote down everything, every word, every gesture, every reaction. They had built this test to expose a fraud. Instead, the test kept handing them evidence they couldn't explain away. Then the train pulled in, and it happened on the platform in full view of 15 witnesses. In the crowd, Shanti's eyes locked onto an elderly man she had never met in her life. She pushed toward him, bent down, and touched his feet in respect, the gesture reserved for an elder of one's own family. The man was Kedarnath's older brother. No one had pointed him out. No one had named him. An 8-year-old had just picked a relative out of a chaotic train station crowd by memory alone. From there, she stopped being a passenger and became a guide. She directed the group through winding streets she had supposedly never walked, calling out turns before they reached them. She led them straight toward the house she said had once been hers. Along the way, she recognized neighbors and relatives, naming them, reacting to them. She used household words specific to the Chaube family, their private term for a paratha, their word for the lavatory vocabulary outsiders simply wouldn't have. Each correct detail tightened a knot the skeptics couldn't loosen. At the home of Lugdi's old parents, the commission set one more trap. They let her walk into a crowd and find them herself with no help at all. For a single heartbeat, she faltered. Mistaking an aunt for her mother, then corrected herself and went straight to the right people. She recognized Lugdi's father. Witnesses described her dissolving into tears, a small girl overwhelmed by reuniting with parents who were not, by any normal logic, hers. Grown men in that room admitted they were shaken by what they were watching. By now, the commission had a real problem. They had come to debunk a child, and instead, they had recorded dozens of verified hits, names, streets, faces, private family words. But recognition can always be argued over. Coincidence, suggestion, a lucky guess. The men needed something harder, something physical, something only the dead woman herself could possibly have known. And Shanti was about to hand it to them, the one buried detail I promised you at the very start. This is where it gets really interesting. Inside the house she swore had been hers, Shanti led the commission upstairs to the second floor. She stopped at one specific spot and told them, plainly, that before she died, she had buried her savings right there, money she had hidden away in her old life. This was the test that no amount of coaching could survive. Either the money was there, exactly where a woman dead for 10 years said she had left it, or the whole astonishing case would finally crack wide open. The men started to dig. They found the hiding place. They found the container. But the money was gone. For one moment, it looked like the crack the skeptics had been waiting for all along. She had pointed to a stash that wasn't there. The believers' faces fell, and then Kedarnath spoke up, and what he admitted flipped the entire moment on its head. Because that empty hiding spot did not prove the girl wrong. It proved that she knew a secret only the dead woman and her own husband could ever have shared. Kedarnath confessed that after Lugdi died, he had discovered that exact hiding place and quietly taken the money for himself. He had never told a single soul. Yet the girl had just led 15 strangers to the one spot where his late wife had hidden her savings, and she was right that the money had once been there. The only reason it was empty was that the husband had secretly emptied it years before. She hadn't failed the test at all. She had caught him in a secret he'd kept buried with his wife. In 1936, the commission published its report, and the conclusion landed like a thunderclap. In their judgment, Shanti Devi truly was the reincarnation of Lugdi Devi. Not everyone agreed. A skeptic named Balchand Nahata fired back that the evidence didn't warrant such a claim, that suggestion and coincidence could account for all of it. The debate never fully closed. But decades later, the renowned researcher Ian Stevenson reviewed the whole case and counted at least 24 specific statements she had made that matched the verified facts. So that's the buried detail I promised you. The empty hiding place that exposed a husband's secret and became the single hardest piece of this case to dismiss. Shanti Devi grew up, never married, and quietly insisted on her 2 lives until she died in 1987. A Swedish skeptic who came to disprove her left, calling it the only fully proven case of reincarnation he'd ever seen. Nearly a century later, no one has cleanly explained how a 4-year-old knew a stranger's wart, his city, and his secret. So, if it wasn't a past life, she was remembering what exactly was it? Hope you got something out of this. Hit subscribe for more in this lane, and we'll see you in the next one.